When Lucifer fell, he didn't fall alone. Among the sparks and screaming wings were whispers, fragments of himself. Okay? And as he sailed away from the light, he cast them to the winds, scattering them across earth. Each one found purchase, planted in a bloodline. Okay? They grew up looking like any other human, neighbors and friends, carrying his fury, his voice, and his curse in their veins. These were his firstborn vessels for the devil's schemes and pawns in his eternal game. They knew him not as a father, only as a shadow in their soul, a hunger in their heart, and a fire in their eyes that burned for more. There have been many such stories over the centuries. One in particular comes from the cobbled streets and gaslight era of 1800s France. A young noblewoman sat in her room, pen scratching across parchment. Round her lay stacks of books, their leather spines cracked with age, whispering secrets from beyond the grave. But she wasn't reading these ancient texts. She was writing them, or at least trying to. The words flowed from her hand in elegant script, forming sentences without her conscious thought, and yet they were written backward. As dawn crept in, staining the sky with hues of rose and gold, she slept, her quill clattering to the floor. Her husband, a man of science and reason, found her writing in this strange, backwards fashion. At first, he dismissed it as a mere quirk, an eccentric habit of his wife's mind. But as weeks turned into months, the volume of her writings alarmed him. She bore no resemblance to the madwomen he'd heard of, those who cut off their own hair or spoke to unseen companions. No, his wife appeared normal, even beautiful. Yet something was undeniably wrong. Then came the birth, a child with no heartbeat. Her cradling the lifeless infant, tears streamed down her face. A stark contrast to the child's unnaturally flushed skin and disturbingly lively eyes. Then the child spoke, not in a helpless infant's cry, but in perfect Latin, reciting passages from the very books found strewn across the floor of the bedroom. Days turned into years, and the child, whom they named Lucifer after the fallen angel, grew with unnatural swiftness. 7. He vanished, leaving behind only a faint, sulphurous scent and a whisper of his name. For 26 long years, there was nothing but an echoing absence where the boy had been, and then he returned, now a strapping young man of 33. He walked through the streets of Paris as if owning them, his eyes burning with an otherworldly fire. He gathered followers, preaching in fiery sermons, denouncing the hypocrisy of the church and predicting its imminent downfall. He spoke of a coming darkness, a great falling star that would signal the end of days. His followers, entranced by his charisma and unnerved by his intensity, took his words as prophecy. As the city buzzed with anticipation, the once noble family watched from the shadows, both fascinated and terrified by the spectacle their son had become. They saw the crowds swelling, heard the fervor in his voice, and trembled before the power that coursed through him. Some whispered that Lucifer sold his soul to the devil for knowledge and power. Others claimed he was the Antichrist, the harbinger of chaos and damnation. The truth lay somewhere between these whispers, hidden in the echo of Lucifer's laughter and the glint in his eye. Many say he still lives, ruling a billion-dollar empire of sin and secrets. But the question isn't whether Lucifer still walks among us, it's how can we be sure that he isn't already inside us? Because Lucifer doesn't need to return. He already is here. He has children. And so the legacy continues, a terrifying tale passed down through generations. A story not just of a fallen angel, but of humanity's enduring fascination with the darkness that lies just beneath the surface. It's a tale that reminds us that sometimes the greatest horrors are born not in the depths of hell, but in the hearts of men. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is a new series. I'm going to be doing some horror stories. So if you like scary stuff, please stay tuned, because we're going to be doing a lot more of this. Also, if you could please like and subscribe, it would help out a lot. And if you have any good scary stories you want to share with me, please Leave them in the comments below. Maybe I'll use yours in an upcoming episode. Thank you guys so much for watching, and goodbye. Story 2. The Boy Who Saw Too Much. On January 25th, 1994, a 9-year-old boy named Alexis Miguel Cifuentes left his home in a small village in southern Chile to go to school, but he never got there. For 3 days, people looked everywhere for him, okay? They sent out search parties and they combed the countryside for miles around the town. After 3 full days, almost everyone had given up hope that he would be found alive. But on the 3rd day, just when they were about to start bringing the boy's body home, something remarkable happened. A woman heard what she thought was Alexis playing a flute in a remote part of the Andes Mountains. She wasn't too sure if it really was him, but she reported it to the police anyways. The officers went out to check, and much to their astonishment, it actually was him. Alexis was sitting in a cave in the mountains with his flute, and he appeared to be perfectly fine. But soon it became clear that everything had changed. Alexis was no longer the same boy who had disappeared 3 days earlier. Sure, he looked okay on the outside, but his eyes looked like black holes. They were empty and lifeless and seemed to be staring into infinity. His parents were overjoyed to see that he was still alive, but when they started asking him questions, it became clear that something very wrong had happened to him. He didn't seem to know them at all, and he didn't seem to remember anything about his old life before disappearing. He couldn't even remember his own name, though he did insist that he had one. When he was asked what his name was, all he would say was, "It's gone. It was taken by light. I don't know it anymore. I don't remember." When he was asked where he had been, what had happened to him, or who he had been with, he didn't answer. He just stared off into space blankly and said nothing at all. Alexis remained silent for many days after being found. He refused to speak, eat, or drink. He would just sit, staring off into the distance as if he was seeing something that nobody else could see. Then, after 5 long days of silence, he finally spoke. He told the doctor that he had seen the man from his visions again, the man who had taken his name, and that the man wanted him to deliver a message to the world. The message was this: beware the light, beware when the sun turns green. That is when it will happen. After saying this, Alexis fell into another long silence, but he did begin eating and drinking again. He also began walking around the hospital, talking to himself, but he didn't talk to anyone else. He was still very obviously not right in the head, but at least he was alive. Then something really strange happened. One night, the hospital where Alexis was staying experienced a citywide blackout. All the lights went out and everything shut down. There was not even a generator to switch over to. KISS meant that they couldn't run any tests, keep any patients alive, and they couldn't even use flashlights because there was no electricity. Of course, as soon as the outage occurred, doctors rushed to Alexis's room to see what had happened, but he was perfectly fine. He hadn't suffered any ill effects from the sudden darkness, but he did seem very pleased. He said, "It's getting dark. Soon the one below will be here." He is angry. He wants us to leave. Another thing that happened while Alexis was in the hospital was that he began to age very rapidly. He went from looking 9 years old to 16 years old in just a matter of weeks. This was obviously very disturbing to everyone, but especially to his family, who wondered why he was maturing so quickly. One day, his mother went into his room and found him writing on the wall with chalk. She read what he had written: "I am going away. The light is taking me. Don't look for me. I will be back when everything has been destroyed." His mother screamed for help, but when other people came into the room, they saw that the walls were blank. Nobody knew what he had written. At this point, it became obvious to the doctors that they could not help Alexis. Hay was clearly suffering from some kind of serious mental breakdown. His family wanted to take him home so that they could care for him against the advice of doctors. Alexis was discharged from the hospital and allowed to return home. He lived with his family for several months, and during that time, He did something that scared his family so much that they had to lock him in his room at night. Every night, he would get out of bed and walk around his room clockwise, exactly 12 times. Then he would climb under his blanket and stare at the wall for hours. Every morning, he would do the same thing, but backwards. He would walk counterclockwise exactly 12 times around his room, and then he would spend the rest of the day staring at the wall. One morning, Alexis's family woke up and found that he had vanished. His room was completely empty. All his clothes were still there, but he was nowhere to be seen. The window was open, but there was no sign that he had climbed out. The front door was locked, but there was a big hole in the wall where he had apparently crawled through. His family called the police, but they never found him. About a month later, someone exploring the caves in the Andes came across a drawing on one of the cave walls. The drawing depicted a map of an entire city, including the streets, houses, stores, and landmarks. The person who found the drawing took a picture of it and sent it to the authorities, who then brought in experts to examine the cave. The experts determined that the cave drawings were made with materials that Alexis had been carrying with him, including his backpack and chalk. And the drawing of the city was remarkably accurate. It turned out that the city depicted in the drawing didn't exist. But years later, a developer decided to build that exact city in the spot where Alexis had drawn it. As strange as that is, it gets weirder. A few months later, there was a huge storm in the area. The storm was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. Its winds reached speeds of over 100 miles per hour, and torrential rain poured down on the area for days. The local weatherman said that such a storm was impossible, and that there was no way that it should have been happening in that location. He checked the records and discovered that it was the exact kind of storm that Alexis had described. He had predicted a storm that shouldn't be possible. There was one other cave where Alexis left behind pictures and drawings, but the government kept, this one a secret for fear that too many people would become obsessed with the case and try to find the boy, which would be dangerous. In this cave, they found drawings of astronomical charts, maps of Santiago, and a strange symbol that they couldn't identify. They also found written messages that chilled everyone to the bone. On one of the walls, they found the words, "The One Below," which they believe is the name of whatever entity Alexis had encountered. And on another wall, they found this message, "I was never alone. The One Below gave me the strength. He gave me everything. We are one. No more fear. I am ready. The sacrifice will be great, but necessary." This last message was the final straw for the authorities. They sealed off the cave and forbade anyone from going near it. Some believe that Alexis is still out there somewhere, possibly living among us, possibly waiting for the prophecy he foretold to come true. Thanks for watching. Story 3, The Black Womb Beneath Babylon. Let's dive into it, right? So let's set the scene here. We're in modern-day Baghdad, Iraq. The year is 2003, and the United States has invaded. A squad of soldiers are out on a mission to uncover artifacts and hopefully find some kind of historical evidence that will prove their war is justified. Instead, they find something way more horrifying. See, the soldiers were excavating near the ruins of ancient Babylon when they uncovered a huge cave filled with dark, viscous ooze. The cave was covered in strange symbols and weird glyphs that nobody could understand, and they decided to seal the cave off and bring in experts. Experts who would soon find out they were in way over their heads. In the meantime, though, our boy Private Adam Pierce finds an odd-looking clay tablet that does not look like any artifact from ancient Mesopotamia that scholars had ever seen before. What's really strange about this tablet is that it seemed to hum with power. It almost felt alive. There's also a strange symbol carved into it, one that seems to vibrate in sync with the hum of the artifact. This symbol is the same symbol that was covering the walls of the cave filled with black ooze. But how could this be? Well, it turns out that what the team discovered was an ancient prison. a place that was sealed away beneath the sands of time itself, and whatever was inside of it didn't want to stay buried. See, this prison was made not by man, but by Lucifer himself. With the help of his fallen angels, he created a breeding ground in the earth where he could make new abominations, new creatures that weren't exactly demons, but something far worse. Creatures that Lucifer hoped would eventually take over hell itself when he was gone. The problem was, Lucifer was eventually cast out of hell for his betrayal of the Lord, and with him banished, his demonic bloodline was left to die. That is, until now, because Adam had picked up the artifact without realizing it was cursed, and the moment he touched it, the evil within it began to stir. Adam and his team had no idea that the tablet they found was actually a key that opened the way for the spawn of Lucifer to escape. See, the tablet vibrated at the exact same frequency as the glyphs on the wall. And as it turned out, these glyphs were actually instructions. It's instructions to open the door to release the prisoners inside. Of course, nobody knew this. And to make matters worse, while exploring the cavern, one of the guys accidentally knocked over a vial filled with that black ooze, and suddenly, the glyphs on the wall began to glow red. In a panic, the team quickly tried to cover the glyphs back up, and that is when the cave began to rumble and shake. As the team ran for their lives, they realized the cave wasn't just collapsing, it was actually breathing. The entire prison was alive, and it was very mad that its prisoners were being disturbed. The prison tried to seal itself once again, but it was too late. They had awakened something evil, and that evil wanted out. The story takes a turn here because we get to hear from the point of view of the creature inside. Turns out that this evil entity was once a beautiful angel, one who fell in love with a human woman and had children with her, actually had a whole family, okay? But when God found out, he punished this angel and his family by turning them into creatures of darkness. And now, they've been trapped beneath the earth for thousands of years. But Lucifer promised that he would come back for them. And now, it seems like he's here. But back in the present, the team had just barely managed to escape with their lives. In the ensuing chaos, everyone got separated and Adam found himself alone in a tunnel with the rest of the team dead behind him and whatever was inside the prison approaching fast. And let me tell you, this thing was horrifying. It took the form of a woman who crawled on all fours. She had no face and her skin hung off her body in strips. Not only that, but she whispered in a dead language and seemed to glide across the ceiling of the cave like some kind of spider. When Adam finally stumbled out of the collapsing tunnels, he looked back and saw that the entrance had collapsed and the prison was now completely sealed shut. Adam had escaped, but he was forever changed by what he had seen. He went to the medics and somehow managed to convey what he had seen to them, even though he was blind, deaf, and mute. All he could do was draw what he saw, and that is when the medics saw the true horror of what had happened. See, when Adam drew the creature, they noticed it had no face, but they also noticed that it was missing something else. It had no genitals either. And the drawing that he did of the creature was exactly the same as the carving on the tablet that started this whole mess. In the end, the only thing that the military could do was leak the surveillance footage of the incident and hope that anybody could help them understand what they were dealing with. The last anyone saw of Adam, he was sitting in a corner of the room screaming as he watched the glyphs on the wall begin to glow once again. As it turns out, the prison beneath Babylon isn't just opening, it's fully open now. The mother of all of Lucifer's spawn has been released, and she is coming for him. So yeah, that is the story of the Black Womb beneath Babylon. I thought this was an awesome story. It's definitely different from a lot of the other things that I've read recently, and it is pretty terrifying if you ask me. I mean, this story definitely left me unsettled. Anyway, I thought this was a cool story. I thought it was a fun story. Let me know your thoughts on the Black Womb beneath Babylon down in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Also, if you enjoyed the story, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button If you're new here and you enjoy creepypastas, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss another episode. But until then, I'll see you next time.